Hey guys, Berek here, Equity Podcast. We're talking the 1Q to increase your power in your workout. And we're going to focus on two movements. We're going to focus on the row and the clean. And the Q to increase our power is heels. That's what we're focusing on. Now, heels is a Q, it's not a point of performance. And that's a whole nother podcast that we can have about what's the difference between a Q and a point of performance. But for now, heels is what we're looking for. That is the moneymaker. That is what is going to make you more powerful in these two movements, in the row and the clean. And to be frank, any power-based movement, box jumps, snatches, any kind of jumping, whenever we need power, think heels, and you're going to get more power than if you don't. So this is what we're looking for. We're going to start with the row. First thing, the fault that we see all the time. The fault is when we're in that catch position. When we're in that catch position, we have a tendency, or what we see a lot, is the heels are coming off in the catch, right? So the handle is as close to the fan as it's going to get, and then the heels are coming off. Now what we have to do is drive. We have to do the powerful movement. There's two issues. The first one is think about driving off of your toes. How powerful is that going to be? Not very. So if we're up on our toes and we start trying to drive, we're just not going to have the same amount available to us. If our heels were down in contact with the rower the entire time, you're going to be able to push much more, right? It'd be like if you're trying to push something and you just use your fingers versus you put your heel of your hand on there and push it, right? It's going to be much stronger, much more powerful. So that's definitely going to help increase our drive potential. The second part is that with the row, if our heels are up off the ground, we're never closing our hip, or there is more room for the hip to close. And the reason that is a good thing is if the hip is closed, a small angle, then there's more room to open that angle, that hip. The more angle there is to open, the more power we can create. Power is from the hips. If the hips are already open, there's no power that can be created, right? So if we can close those hips more by keeping the heels down, bringing that chest to the knees, and then we can open. So we're closed, then we open that hip, we can get a lot more power. The heels lets you close that hip, and then it lets you forcibly open it to create power on the row. The next example I want to give is the clean. The clean is very similar. It's a powerful movement. We're basically jumping that bar to our shoulder. The fault that we see is people start coming to their toes too early. And what does that do? Same thing as in the row. The first part is how powerful can you drive out of your toes? It's the same principle. If I try to drive out of my fingers, it's not going to be that strong. If I put my heel on the ground and my fingers and then drive, I'm going to have much more power. Like think about trying to do a push-up on your fingers versus a push-up on your entire hand, right? Much different experience, much faster, much stronger, much more powerful. So we want that drive when we're trying to jump that bar up. The second part is kind of similar to the row, but in a different way. So the point of the row is that we're not able to close the hip as much. For this, in the clean, the issue is that we can't open the hip. If we're on our toes, it is extremely difficult to fully open your hip. So it's not that the hip isn't getting fully closed, but that probably is an issue. It's probably also happening. But we also can't fully open up the hip either. If we can't open the hip, we're leaving power on the table. So we want to hit a full extension on our clean, right? We should be at a arch position, slight arch, a slight extended position, same thing. But if we're on our toes too early, we're not going to be doing that. We're not going to get to that position. So we're leaving power on the table. Instead of getting to this 180 degrees, we're staying at 150. Right? We're not fully opening the hip. If we're on the toes, we're also probably not fully closing the hip in that position either. Again, leaving power on the table. So what do we do with this? What's practical? What's the action item that we can take from this? The action item is when you're pulling, when you're driving on your clean, when you're driving out of your row, when you're getting ready to explode out of your box jump, whatever it is, we want to stay in contact with the ground as long as we can. We want to stay in contact with the rower or the machine as long as we can. If we're driving through our feet, we want to drive through our entire foot, not just part of it. Heels. Stay in those heels as long as we can. The toes, we can take this too far. You can take this too far, where you're up on your toes, where the toes are physically up off the ground. We want the entire foot driving through the ground, driving through the rower the entire time. It's going to increase that drive. It's going to increase the power. You're going to be more explosive. So when you're in that row, drive through the entire foot. When you're in the clean, drive through your foot as long as you can. Heels on the ground as long as you can. You're going to be more powerful. I hope this helped. This helped me a lot with my rowing. So if it helps, share it with somebody who might help it. If you found it helpful, give us a little like and review. We appreciate it. Thank you guys, and cheers.